Hi everyone, welcome to my review of David Sandberg's Lights Out in 2016. So, another David Sandberg film. I watched Animal Creation yesterday. I reviewed that, and I thought that was a very, very good horror film. I absolutely loved quite a lot of that film. It was very, very unique and just very, very patient and just really well made and warm and everything. And David Sandberg, he's only done this and Annabelle really, and then of course some short films. But I really wanted to just see this and see how it stacks up against that. It's not acclaimed, and I have seen actually the short version, and I didn't really plan on doing it like this. It turns out I actually saw the short version, and I thought basically to sum that one up, I would say very, very gimmicky in the way it explored this kind of fear of the dark, and pretty bad acting and just cheap jump scares, and it was really, really underwhelming. I thought it was very, very weak, to be honest. And yes, this is less acclaimed, this version, which is quite weird, because I'll say it now, this is far better. And it's a very, very interesting concept. Of course, something very, very simple, kind of easy to think of, because it's something we can all kind of relate to, maybe. The fear of the dark. I was scared of dark until I was 12, maybe. And then, even now, when I've watched a really, really scary film, or, a disturbing one, and then, on the night of watching that film, I sometimes, am a bit kind of, they get a bit tense and stuff. The scene goes obviously the day after or 2 days after, but I used to be very, very scared of dark, and, most people, at some point have been. And it's something, of course, horror films at their core, they usually, not always, but usually stem from like a fear, an idea that, is manifested into and made, of course, into a screen adaptation, and of course, for example, with Hitchcock films, afraid of, the police quite a lot of the times, people on the run, and that kind of thing. And yeah, that's some of the basic things that horror films can do, and in that sense, it's kind of easy to make a horror film. Unfortunately, so many horror films fail, and of course that they don't give you interesting characters that you can care for, get in the shoes of, and then experience this, kind of in that way. And a lot of horror films are just kind of cheap, kill off all everyone, kind of slashers, or there's ones that are just rely heavily on jump scares. And it's so lazy to do that. But I think this one is really a one that kind of goes against all that. And I didn't expect that, because it's very, very it's quite panned actually. And I was really impressed with Annabelle Creations, and this one's even better. I think this is actually a lot better than Annabelle Creation. There's a spoiler. I think that this film, it's just kind of gets most things right about horror films today, a lot of the time why they fail, and Teresa Palmer, who plays the main character of Rebecca, and you see this prologue, first of all. I will con the prologue, the opening scene. I think it was, Billy Burke, who played this guy. He's in a factory, and basically what in the short film, they kind of just, all it was really was people putting lights off, and the kind of the thing appearing and stuff, and this is basically what the opening scene is. It's got some good elements in there, but it wasn't a great opening scene. It was kind of just, I was thinking it's just going to just be a long version of the short, in that sense, and it wasn't great. But I think it led on to the rest of the film, and then what happened then? It picked up massively. You were introduced to really interesting characters. It kind of dealt as well with family breakups, all this sort of drama, human stuff, in a really, really sincere way, really meaningful, very powerful stuff, and of course, as well, it was a lot better in the horror elements. And actually, where Annabelle Creation kind of had the final act was the worst part of it. I think this one, it's got a pretty amazing final act, which is quite rare actually for horror films, because usually their final act is the weakest, as I've said before. And I think that's just a case of people not fully knowing how to keep up the suspense in a patient way. I think Hitchcock is one of the guys who could do this, and he knew not to give up, too early, and kind of just maintain that suspense and everything, and not just kind of give in and give like a final act that's bland, just because it delivers all the explosive stuff and it has to be bigger. This one does, of course, a lot of things happen in the final act, but it goes for more of an emotional kind of payoff, and it's not like the traditional. But I just think that this film is consistently really, really good and mostly great actually. This character of Rebecca, I think, is just really, really good. Very strong character. Teresa Palmer, I think, was in Knight of Cups, which I saw, and she was actually one of the things I would praise about that film. I did not like that film, but I think she was really good in that when she was there. And yeah, she really impressed me. Very, very good in this film. Just a very strong character. She's got her brother in the film as well. And her half brother, I think it was, and she kind of looks out for him in the film, and it's kind of like a caring relationship she has with him, and very, very warm stuff. This film is full of heart. I didn't quite know what to expect really with this film, but yeah, it really is. It's not a cold film. It's not a soulless film, which a lot of horror films are, and it just kind of deals with family struggles and stuff, and issues in a really, really meaningful way. And then as well, the actual horror is pretty stunning. As well, her boyfriend Brett, I thought was really good as well. He's not he's not as good as her, not as good as some of the other characters, but I think it was kind of like this warm character as well, very enjoyable. I like the romance in the film. As well, the mother of Sophie, I thought she was really, really good, very complex, and as well, Billy Burke, of course, when he appeared at the beginning, it wasn't great, but really the rest of the performances I could praise all of them. All round really good cast, and just well written characters. Just really well written characters, and yeah, I think as well. This character, Diane, it is the mother keeps seeing, and you hear different things. What they do as well, the exposition throughout this film, with this actual, with this creature, that you keep seeing in the dark. I think it's really, really well done. The mystery at first, but also the actual backstory, slowly unravels across the film. It's really, really compelling, I thought. It's quite complex and layered, and you kind of feel a bit of sympathy, at times towards this kind of thing, this creature, and of course it's got like an emotional tie to the actual mother in the film, and of course it leads to a very, very emotional climax. But yeah, I won't of course ruin what happens and how it unfolds. But I just say, it's very, very involving, highly involving with that. So it gets characters right, and it gets the actual horror, the actual backstory to the creature, and that is actually given depth and everything. What I will say is that it's not, and I don't really know how much I can con this, because I don't always look for this in a horror film, really. And yes, you probably think it's stupid for me saying this, but to actually be scary, and the question always arises with me: how scary does a horror film actually need to be, and what really is scary, and what I'll say is it is scary, and in the sense that actually matters to me, which is the sense of dread, the atmosphere, and actually like The Shining, where it's psychologically scary, and it kind of gets you think about it long after the film basically, and it's stuff that is actually genuinely scary and unsettling. There's other types of scares, which is jump scares, and if this film didn't have jump scares in it really, and it was doing right what it done with the rest of the film, which was actually being scary, it was unsettling, it was disturbing, and it was creepy and everything, then I couldn't have conned it. But unfortunately there is jump scares, and there's quite a lot of them, and they're meant to be scary, and if they weren't there I wouldn't be able to con them, but they are there and they're not scary, and at times they're just not, they're kind of just generic jump scares. It's very, very engaging in the sense that whenever the lights are off, you do see the monster. And it's quite original in some of the ways that they do things with the lights, but the actual jump scares that are there designed to scare you and stuff, I didn't care for, and it kind of annoyed me a bit. That's some of my cons of the film, really. And as I've said, a horror film doesn't need to have jump scares, really. And of course, it doesn't need to kind of to do that, to shock, but because it's done so well, with the actual scary, the unsettling, unnerving atmosphere, and the actual, thought of it all, and the backstory of this character, the fact that this character's always been with this girl, that was really, really disturbing and everything. But because of the jump scares, I have to dock some marks off for that, because it just didn't work, and whatever is on the screen, I judge, and the fact that didn't quite work brings it down a little bit, and of course the prologue wasn't great, and it's not a masterpiece, it wasn't masterful throughout. There was maybe one scene that was pretty masterful, but generally it ranges from great to very good, and then the opening wasn't good at all. But I think that the sound design is great as well, and the younger brother in the film as well. I think he was great. A great performance from the young actor there, and he really as well just I really cared for this relationship, the sister and brother, half brother, and as well kind of how they're kind of like a family, all three of them, and her boyfriend, and it wasn't perfect in the way it started off, that romance. It was a bit wasn't the best of writing, but it soon picks up to something that I really cared for. And just the family unit that was central throughout the film, was just great. And I just really liked the child performance, and the mother as well. I think she was really good in this film. A character full of depth, and really, really felt stuff for her throughout the film. It's quite unsettling, and it deals with other issues that I won't get into. But look out for them. There's a lot of things it deals with. Mental illness as well and stuff. And it's just, I really do like the creature, the actual design, everything of it. And the idea of it, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. The idea that when the lights are out, you can see it. So kind of, when the lights do go out, you kind of know that something is going to pop up. And of course, the jump scares weren't done too well. The final act, though, I do actually think it pulls off the jump scares right. And it obviously, of course, is scary, and it doesn't, lose its sense of character and everything in the final act, which, as I've said, a lot of horror films do become very, very generic at the end, and just they feel like they have to go really, really far. This one kept up the tension, it kept up the mystery, and it really just heightened the emotions and the payoffs. So I think this manages to get into my great scores, and you know what, I think I give it a 90%. I think it has some flaws, and it doesn't quite reach the top end of the nines, in that sense, and it's not it's not got the best of openings, and some of the jump scares and everything do taint the film a little bit. If they weren't there, and the rest of the film was as it was, I think it would have been a lot better than it was. But already I think it's a great film. I think it's better than Annabelle Creation. So this is at the moment Sandberg's best film for me. And what an underrated film. Maybe if you see this film, if you've seen it, tell me what you think in the comments, because it's really surprising, like, for me, how this is quite panned. I think it was really, really good. And I just overall I just cared for the most of the characters. I think it's very, very just a classical feel. Just in that sense. Quite peaceful at times, warm, and just very, very human, and dealt with loss and things like that, and ways of coping with it. And I just think it was as well very creative in some of the way that they try to get light and everything to kind of stop this monster appearing. And yes, obviously the jump scares and stuff didn't work for me, and it didn't go Conjuring level, in that sense, but it was a great film. I feel it just manages to get into there, and as well. I was very impressed that the final act didn't disappoint. So yeah, Lights Out. You know, I recommend checking out both, but this is the one that is actually great for me. I didn't care for the other one, the short version, of course, made by Sandberg as well. And I just think, this is amazing. This film definitely took me by surprise, and it's another great horror film. I think, of course, there was massive dips, and really from the mid 2000s until sort of 2014, 2015, there was a massive, just consistent dip of horror films. I feel, and because you had some great ones at the beginning of the decade, like 28 Days Later. And it just really took a dip, and still, of course, now it's plagued by loads of generic horrors, but this is one that you should definitely check out. So thanks for watching my review of David Sandberg's Lights Out.